Welcome, welcome everyone to this very timely webinar in which we will be discussing the matters of Haiti, Black farmers, and World Food Day. Yes, October 16th was World Food Day. It was an opportunity for us to remember those who do benefit from the bounty of food and nutrition and those who do not. We at Bread for the World feel that today, the 18th of October, is still in the season of remembering this call to the global space of World Food Day. We are delighted that you have taken the time to join us to have this very timely discussion. We are very blessed to have a member of Congress, our Congressional Black Caucus member, the Representative Stacey Plaskett, who will join us for this time together, and a panel of experts to accompany her presentation. We are delighted at Bread for the World to care about issues of equity. Yes, we care about issues of racism. Yes, we care about issues around gender inequities as well. And so today we are going to entertain a fuller conversation of some of these dynamics that inform this space as we remember World Food Day. I will be joined by my dear colleague at Bread for the World, Ms. Tonya Johnson. She will be our moderator today. But on behalf of Bread for the World, and on behalf of our president, Mr. Reverend Eugene Cho, and our managing director, Heather Taylor, Ms. Heather Taylor, and all the directors, board of directors, and the wider Bread family, you are most welcome. Today's discussion is obviously very timely. We have heard so much about what has been happening at the border relative to our Haitian brothers and sisters. We have heard so much about our Haitian brothers and sisters since the late 1700s and the early 1800s. Yes, it was 1804 when those who were enslaved, including my ancestors and many on this particular webinar, said that it was not acceptable to be enslaved. And so the insurrection that happened, that was successful in 1804 occurred. It followed the revolution in the United States in 1776. And by historical accounts, it was this particular revolt against being enslaved that we record the second revolt against oppression and suppression. Haiti has a long history of rising up. And even in this moment, with the challenges that face the country, we know that Haiti is still rising up. We will hear more about this conversation as we speak about matters around food security, nutrition, and other issues that matter at Bread for the World. We will also hear the connectivity with Black farmers globally, whether in the United States, on the continent of Africa, or wherever farming takes place that is led and determined by those of African and African descent. We are delighted that with the African Union, we see the nutrition campaign that is accompanying the African Union 2063 plan, the strategic plan, that includes agribusiness, enhancement with the Continental Free Trade Agreement to make sure that markets are available and are equitably shared, not only on the continent of Africa, but globally. Bread was a leader with AGOA, the Africa Growth Opportunities Act. And yes, Bread is a leader in saying that food for all matters, that nutrition for all matters. And so on this day, as we bring the lens relative to people of African descent, we welcome you to this timely discussion. We now will turn over the conversation to the various panelists who are part of this time together. We will now turn over the introduction to Representative Plaskett, who will come to the program. And we will also have a prayer before we begin. And so please allow me to lead us in that prayer as we remember and dedicate ourselves to involving not only legislative practices, but meditative practices that help us understand these issues. Let us pray. Amazing God, the God of every season and of all people in your beautiful creation. We thank you for this time to reflect on the ways in which all of us can make a difference relative to the issues we are discussing today. We thank you for Bread for the World. We thank you for the Congressional Black Caucus. We thank you for all of the panelists who have come to share out of their own narratives and their expertise. We ask that the words of our mouth, the meditations of our heart, be acceptable in thy sight. You are our strength, and we give thanks. And we give thanks to people of Africa and African descent who give farming the kind of opportunities within our communities that also gives nutrition and food so that all of the people may live. We pray these things in your matchless name. Amen and Ashe. And now we would like to turn over the program to Ms. Tonya Johnson. Ms. Johnson is our domestic policy analyst and senior. She's a senior domestic policy analyst. She comes to us from various walks of life, not least of which is the Congressional Black Caucus. And she's a joy to work with at Bread for the World. And so it is my joy to turn over to her the moderation for the rest of this time together. And I will give you a closing remark at the end. Thank you so much. Tonya, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Angelique, for convening us here today and being the visionary behind World Food Day here at Bread. And since I've been at Bread for the last year, you have certainly convened a great group of people and panelists to be able to talk about this conversation and the importance of it. But as we get started, I wanted to certainly greet everyone out there in Zoom land, webinar land. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again for joining us. This is a very important conversation on Haiti, Black farmers on World Food Day. We are especially thankful to our wonderful friend at Bread for the World, Congresswoman Plaskett, who represents the U.S. Virgin Islands. She is a member of the House Committee on Agriculture, where she works to ensure communities receive adequate funding for necessary programs, and those programs provide support to farmers and needed assistance to hardworking families. Let's take a minute to watch a video from Congresswoman Plaskett. 1 second.
Hi, I'm Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, and it's my honor to join you all for this year's World Food Day event. I'd like to acknowledge all special guests, attendees, and particularly the students who are participating in today's program. Food is considered by many to be a basic human right, yet 1 in 9 people globally experience chronic hunger. During the pandemic, food insecurity increased globally from 185 million to impacting 296 million people. Currently, over 40 million Americans are affected by hunger each day. Upsurges in lack of resources, food pricing, etc., has decreased the quantity and quality of food consumed by middle-class and lower-income families, increasing global hunger drastically. In just the Virgin Islands, food prices has increased by 20.7% in total throughout the territory, 25.8% on St. John, 18.9% on St. Croix, and 17.3% on St. Thomas. The purpose of World Food Day is to raise awareness on the effects of hunger and to give attention to what can be done to help and reduce it. Because hunger impacts every county in the country, a collective effort is needed if we want to make a difference to decrease these effects. Global hunger is not just about food. It has a direct connection with poverty, unemployment, climate change, gender discrimination, and various other issues that have lasting impacts negatively on people, on our community, and the world. These impacts directly affect every asset of life: education, healthcare, crime, family structure, even the economy, creating a decline in productivity due to malnutrition, as well as a decrease in mental and physical health. A jarring example of this is child hunger costs the U.S. $28 billion a year because poorly fed children perform poorly. The U.S. loses $500 billion in productivity each year due to child poverty. These are the reasons why my office is proud of the important, much-needed funding we've been able to secure for our territory through the American Rescue Plan and each piece of COVID legislation that has been passed and signed into law. These bills make key investment in food security by extending the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, maximum benefits, and expanding the pandemic EBT program so that low-income families have access to school meals and food assistance year-round. My office is working to support food supply and delivery systems, to working to increase funding for a ferry system to allow locally grown food to circulate between islands, as well as supporting and pressing local resiliency to drive down food costs by lowering the cost of electricity and supporting our local agriculture. It's my hope that each of you will take advantage of the resources and information made available by the presenters during the different workshops and demonstrations today. And don't forget your free seedlings. Thank you and enjoy.
Thank you, Congresswoman Plaskett, and thank you to your staff who's always there when we need you. Now we're going to get over to those collective voices she spoke of in the video regarding our issues. So let me make sure everything is here. Good, good, good. So thank you, Congresswoman. And so now what we're going to do is hear from our panelists, and we're going to start with, let's say, Miss Marie Yolaine Toms, Community to Community, Creating Self-Sufficient Communities by Working with the Community. Next, following her, we'll have Mr. Ben Burkett. The Federation is a nonprofit cooperative association of Black farmers, landowners, and cooperatives. Following Mr. Ben Burkett, we will hear from Chef Johnny Rhodes. Chef Johnny Rhodes comes to us from Jensen Chronicles, Indigo Food Fight Forums. Chef Rhodes' mission is to continue advancing the culture through agriculture and land ownership, and it represents the sacrifice and beauty of the African-American experience. And last up is our Reverend Yvette Blair, serves as a senior pastor of First Christian Methodist Church in the Redbird area of Dallas. Again, thank you all so much for being here with us today. We're going to start with Ms. Toms, who's going to give us some opening remarks. Each of our panelists will give us opening remarks, and then we'll follow up with questions. For those who are joining us in webinar land and Zoom land, certainly feel free to drop your question in the chat box so that Stephanie or Angelique can get that to us, and hopefully we have time to answer those. And if there's any other things you want to share with us, statements, certainly feel free to do that as well. Ms. Toms?
Thank you very much, Tonya. Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. My thanks for Reverend Dr. Walker-Smith for inviting me back to be among the bread community today for this very important topic. I'm happy to share community to communities work, and I'm excited to learn from the other panelists that will be speaking today. So to put things in context, once known as the Pearl of the Antilles due to its export of rice, sugar, and cocoa for over a generation after its independence in 1804, Haiti, through its farmers, was able to produce enough rice for the country as well as exporting to other countries. The Creole pig was also a source of wealth for many farmers. Three major events changed that. In the 70s, it was estimated that there was 1.2 million pigs in Haiti before the African swine flu. In 1981, a consortium of NGOs and governments, including the United States, convinced the Haitian government to kill all of the pigs, compensate the farmers, and to supply new pigs. Though the first was done, all of the pigs were destroyed. The farmers did not receive the adequate compensation, and the new pigs were actually foreign, brought in. One of the quotes I read said, one of the farmers complained that the foreign pig lives in a better house and eats better food than we do. During the 1990s, the Clinton administration's trade policies all but destroyed the rice farming for Haitian farmers. In 2016, Hurricane Matthew made landfall in southern Haiti, which is the country's agricultural production area. Staple crops like rice and corn, beans were wiped out, and export crops, coffee, fruits, cocoa were destroyed. Experts said at that point that it would take 5 years, which brings us to August 2021, when the earthquake occurred also in the South, impacting many farmers because the location of the earthquake was really more so in the mountainside. So this led, of course, to a lot of food insecurity. Currently, with this backdrop, C2C is part of a larger fabric of improving life and communities and outcomes for individuals, not just in Petit Guave where we work, but we believe the whole country. C2C's plans include at least an impact 13 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. C2C's work with the Haitian farmers in Petit Guave on the mountainside began with a planting strategy in 2013. This environmental stabilization plan included the planting of 14,000 seedlings, resulting in fruit-bearing and ground strengthening forests, as the community also engaged in community gardens and home gardens. This plan was successful in that it decreased the damage caused by hurricanes from 2013 to present. We're also engaged in disaster risk reduction with the Peasant Association. And I'll also say, and I think somebody mentioned this earlier, the holisticness of it. We're in the process of securing funding for a community health and wellness center so that folks are able to not just work, but understand health management. Because in truth, I don't know who works harder than farmers, honestly, from the sun up to sundown most of the time. So for us, a change in the current policies and legislation to make it a more level playing field and more equitable, and investing in the country and in the people. NGOs, businesses, and governments can work together for the betterment of the people. I actually recommend a book called From Aid to Trade. That's an excellent source of examples of this. A lack of infrastructure is the reason that multiple countries in the Caribbean are impacted. Haiti more so because of minimal infrastructure. It's almost like we have to restart every time there is a disaster. For hurricanes and earthquakes, it's not a matter of if, but when. So creating and implementing disaster risk reduction plans, which our Peasant Association is engaged in with the Mountainside Partner Community and the farmers, and investing in people. The continuous care initiative that I mentioned earlier focuses on the health and wellness of the community and ensuring that they're able to work as well as small business workshops to ensure the profitability of their harvests. This is how dignity is restored. Getting the agricultural infrastructure up and running should be the priority. Investing and reinvesting in proven business concepts is key. Charity is not the solution for poverty. Prosperity is the solution for poverty. Healthy people prosper. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was a wealth of information. I hope you guys caught that. She gave us some great gems. Also a very good resource, From Aid to Trade. I'm sure that we will certainly see if we probably already have that in our bookcase at Bread for the World, but certainly I'll be adding it to my library as well, because I think that'll be a great resource. I love what you said when you talked about it is about from poverty to prosperity. And so next up, we have Mr. Ben Burkett with the Federation. Welcome, Mr. Ben.
Good morning. I'd like to say good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
I can think it was a pleasure to be on this panel to say a few words about myself as well as the Federation of Southern Cooperative. As World Food Day, and we usually celebrate that within the Federation here in this office. I remember a year before last, we all had to come dressed as a vegetable. And then you had to bring a dish. So if I can't dress as okra, I had to dress like an okra. And I have to explain where it originated from and how it ties into the diet that we eat. So we have celebrated World Food Day many years within the Federation of Southern Cooperative. I do sympathize with the Haiti at the present time. We did work in Haiti at the Federation with the cocoa farmers. And we continue a relationship with farmers in Haiti and about other parts of the world. The Federation is a Southern organization. We have membership in 15 states here in the South, and over 70 cooperatives. We work through cooperative, but then at the same time, we work with other farmers all over the world. We do have a cooperative member in Senegal, one in Gambia, one in South Africa, as well as Zimbabwe. And the Congress representative from the Virgin Islands, 8 of us will be traveling to the Virgin Islands on the 29th. Spend several days with the farmers on the island of St. Croix. So we have a relationship where they come visit with us and we come visit them. But the whole issue of food is very important. As a farmer, and I grow several vegetable crops as well as timber, as well as soybean, I know the relationship that all of us must have with food. But then I was talking with one of my coworkers, Mr. Jerry Pennick, on Friday. It said at one time we as Black farmers own 30 million acres of land in the United States. Now it's less than 3 million. And I was talking to him about it. Had we maintained control of that to the present day, we will be an awesome economic, powerful entity. We had that 30 million acres today. So we continue to support our African American farmers in the South. We want to see that increase from 3 million to 5 million. We want to see another generation of young people take over farming in the Black community. Then one of the speakers spoke just before me talked about if you have a robust agricultural system in a country, you can build economic wealth. So if you trace the history of this country, United States, the agricultural production drives all the other industries. So you create jobs, you create opportunity, you free up other people to go out and invent things like Google and Apple and all these other things we have on the computer now. But the basis of being able to feed yourself as a country is very important. And speaking before, I was a part of that where here in Mississippi and Louisiana said, go to other countries, don't grow any more rice. We grow enough rice if we export it to you, like Haiti and many other African countries. But that destroyed the local rice production. So now we're working in other countries like Senegal on how people want to import rice, they want to buy their own local rice. So we're willing to go back to do what we can help the people in Haiti. We also know that it takes financial support. So here at the Federation, we have an internal fund. Well, when we have meetings, we ask our members for the International Development Fund within our own membership. So we can use that money to send to farmers in Haiti and other parts of the world. There's not much in there, but the mere fact that we asked our own members to support that. So we've been sending some money to to the farmers in the Virgin Islands, the Virgin Islands Farmers Cooperative, and of this month. But if any way we can plan, executive director of the Federation of Southern Cooperative, I've been farming now, believe it or not, for 50 years. So that's a long time to do any profession. And I know that I have to now begin the process of looking at the other generation to continue on the farming operation. So if any way we can be of any assistance, and I'll stay on the whole while. If I have any questions, I'll be more than try to answer. Thank you all again.
Wow, well, thank you so much, Mr. Ben Burkett. We really appreciate it. You have said a whole lot, which is a wealth of information. I hope the young people, the next generation of farmers are here. I'm from the South, from an urban city, so farming is sort of new to me, but I really understand the impact of, now growing basic things in my home, in my little small herb garden. And so I'm so happy about that. In addition, I want to make sure I connect you with Congresswoman Plaskett office, being that you're going to the Virgin Islands. I don't know whether or not her staff is participating, but I know some of them may be joining us. But I would hope that, there will be some linkage to see how we can continue to even Brad be a part of that, the work that you're doing there. The piece around farmers supporting farmers is crucial. And so I'm just really happy that you're here today. Got a lot of good information from you. Next up, we're going to go to Mr. Chef Johnny Rhodes is here with us today with Food Fight Farms. I want to hear a little bit more about that. That was very interesting to me when I read about it. And I just want to know if you can just share with us what you have going on. Thank you.
First and foremost, thank you guys for having me on here. It's such an honor to be on this panel. I'm not sure if Mr. Burkett remembers me or not, but we met a few years ago in New Orleans at an event called the Radical Exchange. And I think in the midst of the event going on, me and you kind of snuck away and we talked for about 2 hours during the entire event. And that conversation was so pivotal for me at such a young age, and at such a pivotal point in my career that since that moment, I have since purchased 6 acres of land myself to begin working towards some of the things in which we spoke about. So it means a lot to see you here still championing the thing that you spoke to me about, 3 years ago. And Lord knows you've been doing it for 50 years now, as you said. Since then, I started my career off with my own restaurant titled Restaurant Indigo, which focused on the history of soul food, it didn't just focus on what we ate, but why we ate it, the social and living conditions that we experienced here in the U.S., which kind of forced us into eating certain things, for better or for worse. And in that, I've discovered that it's not just my job to educate people, but to also lead by example. So in doing so, I created a farm titled Food Fight Farms, and the idea is combating poverty with food. And essentially, by doing so, we're also looking at creating more land ownership and kind of taking the things in which we experienced and flipping it on its head. With that being is sharecropping. Sharecropping was something that essentially was really damaging for us, but I think that it could also be a way to the future for us, as we own less than 3% of the land in the country. As we look at creating more equity for ourselves, we need more land ownership. Doesn't matter how many doctors, lawyers, technicians we have, military people we have, if everybody's going home eating fast food. My goal is to basically turn every household into some type of farming system to where we can barter for ourselves. And not only barter for ourselves by trading with each other, but bartering with ourselves under a single umbrella. The idea of Food Fight Farms isn't just for me to own land and grow food myself, but for us to own land and essentially lease it out to other people to manufacture food for themselves and then resell it to our grocery store concept. Our grocery store concept is titled Broham, Fine Soul Food and Groceries. And we're essentially looking at creating the world's first self-sustainable grocery store, meaning that we're filling it with products that we grow ourselves, but also the products, the canned goods and all the other products that go in there, they're culturally sound. If you look at some of the other grocery stores across the country, every cultural identity has their own grocery store. We are one of the many that no longer have those. And when we look at any form of community, any form of soundness or escape for us, you have to have that cultural grocery store that's dedicated to our taste buds. And we're looking at bringing that with our grocery store, and then also make it healthy by bringing the products from our farm, whether it be fruits and vegetables or even animals as well.
Wow, absolutely. If you would just tell us where you're from, where are you doing most of your work? Where have you brought your land? Just so folks can get a sense of where you are.
I'm out in Houston, Texas.
Oh, okay. You're in Texas. Texas got some great things going on over there, despite all the other stuff.
Yeah, I was about to say Texas is a huge conflict of interest for itself right now.
I don't know if you know Dr. Diva Daughtry with Chef. Well, it's not really Chef, but her son Chaz with the is it off of Sweetwater Lane? They have a farm. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Very
I'm
good.
familiar. Chaz is a great friend of mine.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much for being here. We'll have more time to chat, but now up the phenomenal. I had the opportunity, I believe, last year to share with Reverend Blair to talk about a myriad of issues, but today we have her with us here today. So you're up, Reverend Blair.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you to Reverend Dr. Walker Smith for this invitation to come back. Thank you, Tonya, for moderating this very important discussion. And it is so great to serve alongside the rest of the panelists. I like this Texas connection with Chef Johnny Rhodes. I'm up here in the North Texas area here in Dallas. So I bring you greetings from Dallas, Texas. And just want to say that I enter into this work as the 5th great granddaughter of Matilda Berry, who came all the way to Texas from Arkansas. I am the 4th great granddaughter of Mariah Blair, and according to the 1880 census, they are both listed as farmers and as heads of household. And so that's important for me, and it's important to name that because there was a time when it was normalized for Black people to be farmers. It was normalized for women to be farmers, but then something happened. I read a report recently that said that just 2 generations out of slavery, that by 1910, Black farmers had amassed more than 16 million acres of land and had made up about 14% of farmers. And this is in spite of we never got the 40 acres and a mule that was promised to us. And so now when we look at the amount of land that we own, it is fewer than 4.7 million acres. In Black farms in the United States, we are now down to about 36,000 farms. And so it begs the question then of what happened. And so my work is really to look at the root causes of this through the program, the doctoral program that I'm in at Memphis Theological Seminary in Tennessee. It really looks at how do we look at the intersection of faith, food security, displacement, and gentrification, because they are interrelated. There is no way that we can talk about food justice without also talking about land justice, because anytime you displace people from an area, it affects their livelihood, it affects their ability to be able to have access to food. It impacts them in ways that I don't think we even realize. And so my work is really to have these conversations, to look at what are the root causes, because land is not disappearing. Land is not going anywhere, but there is a displacement of Black farmers throughout the African diaspora that is happening. And so we've got to have these conversations to talk about what the root causes are and to name the things. We've got to be able to name what it is, because until we can name a thing, we can't dismantle a thing. And so this work that I am doing here in the North Texas area and the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I serve on the steering committee of Grow Southeast in Fort Worth, which is our neighboring city to Dallas. And it is really working with the Black farmers and helping them to get through these policies and red tape so that they can utilize the very land that they own to be able to respond to food insecurity and food deserts in the area. And really, I employ this word that Karen Washington uses, food apartheid, because we know that it's structural racism and systems that are at play that causes one group of people to be disproportionately disadvantaged and not have access to food and not have access to the healthy, fresh food that they need. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, usually north of town, there is a plethora of grocery stores and access. So it begs the question of, if there's a food desert on this end, it must mean that there's a food oasis on the other end. And those things don't just happen on their own. There are policies in place that privilege and prioritize one group over the other. And so my role in this is to ask from a faith perspective, then what is our ecclesial response to this? And how do we engage in these conversations and begin to reframe the narrative?
I told y'all she was phenomenal. I told y'all Reverend Blair always comes with the facts and the receipts. And so I am so super excited for the phenomenal panelists we have had to share with us. We're going to get into some questions. I hope Chef Rhodes have not left us. He's not here on the screen, but if he did, we're going to make it a power hour with the women we have left, because I don't see, okay, there we go. There's our brother talking about land ownership. That's the huge piece, particularly in the Black community. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for sharing. But I want to go back, and I'm gonna work my way back. And so we're going to get to everyone as relates to this thing, because I know that in order for us to like really move forward, we got to own something. And so Chef, if you would just talk to us a little bit more about that land ownership piece, you know, for the young farmer or the person. I mean, I don't know if I'm middle aged, but hey, I'm 40 something and I may want to get into land ownership. What are some of the things, how can I go about doing that? Who do I reach out to? I mean, this is new for me. Yeah, I own a home, but I don't own land that I can cultivate and then, you know, start making my own food. Could you share a little bit with us?
Well, thank you for that. To the Reverend's credit, when you talk about food apartheid, there's also agricultural oppression, right? And a part of agricultural oppression isn't just the ability to provide food for yourself, but looking at agriculture as more of a means as not just food, but mineral rights, right? Agriculture is much more than access to food. It's also access to the earth. And my thing when it comes to our experience here in the US and our experience here in particular on this planet is we are treated like tenants because theoretically we are. If you don't own any land, you are essentially a tenant in this country. And because we don't own any land, we get treated as, and it's a little bit of a poem, but it's very factual. And the answer is within the question is when was the last time you seen a Black man killed on his land by a policeman without the Ku Klux Klan? And it speaks to the right to also defend your land, right? Also have the right to live freely on your land, essentially. Whether that's growing food, whether that's mining for oil, or it's simply just having the right to be. And if you would like access to those things, there are different ways in which you can access. You don't have to build a home out of wood. You don't have to build a home out of brick. And I think that's there's certain levels of trauma for us attached to working land and being in the wilderness that we experienced de facto racism after the Great Migration. And told us that if we left land and we took jobs in cities and we pursued education, that we would be better off in that way. But instead, we're actually worse off now than we were then, theoretically speaking, by way of ownership and by way of just empowerment of yourself. Now you cannot pass a degree down to your children. You cannot pass down education. Those are things that you hold as individuals. But as a collective, land is the only thing in which that there is never going to be any more of. Gold reproduces, food reproduces, oil reproduces, land does not. And there are different ways you can go about getting it, whether you would like to go the traditional way and look at banks and things like such, which is very difficult to do because banks do not finance underdeveloped properties and things like such. So it's an uphill battle to acquire raw land, but it is something that if 10 people decided to get together and put their finances together, they can end up with a very sizable amount of land. And then once they do that, then of course break it down. And whether it's creating a family trust or things like such, there are different ways in which it can be done. But the main goal has to be acquiring the land above and beyond anything else.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go back to Reverend Blair. Reverend Blair, you said something earlier when we talked about ecclesiastic. You went into the word. And so because we went into the word, I want to see if you can just share with us some of the values that you know to be true as it relates to that we should associate with a person of faith. If you would share with us some of those values. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I think the values that we should associate as a person of faith is if we proclaim that we serve a sovereign God who is on the side of the oppressed and who made each of us in God's image, then that automatically means that Black farmers and food workers have intrinsic value and worth. They are fearfully and wonderfully made. Next, everything that we need is already in the land and it's already in the earth. And so God is not expanding the earth nor creating more resources as if to suggest that there is a shortage. So as a people of faith, we understand that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, which means that there is an abundance that God has already made available and granted access to. It's a providential provision. So for me, that means that we then cannot support a theology that believes that God is somehow favoring one group of people over another group of people, especially based on supremacist values. And I just want to say quickly that if we understand stewardship versus ownership, and we began to dismantle this historical white supremacist and patriarchal reading of Genesis 1:28, where the text says, fill the earth, subdue it, and have dominion over every living creature, where we take that to mean somehow white privilege, then we can begin to equalize the access. We can create systems that are equitable and sustainable and that disrupt this theology of malpractice so that Black farmers and food workers are not only included at the table, but they are in the conversations and in the positions of leadership to decide for themselves and their communities what food justice and food sovereignty looks like for them.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That was a whole lot. I hope the folks caught it. But in catching that, and I know Ms. Toms talked about this earlier, and so we're going to go to Ms. Toms because what you're talking about when it comes to oppression and when it comes to white supremacy, we know that it's just not here in the United States. We know that it's pretty much all over this world. But I want Ms. Toms to talk about some of those institutional situations, systemic issues that are going on pretty much in Haiti. And if it's going on in Haiti, obviously it's going on in St. Croix, the Virgin Islands, and some of the other Caribbean areas. If you would just share with us some of your thoughts around combating those systems. What are some of the ways, what are some of the things we could do? Some of our bread allies and people in the field who are out there advocating, but they sometimes they get stuck. I mean, in this work, being an advocate for a lot of different issues, you know, you just get to a crossroad and sometimes you get tired. Tell us what do you do to keep your faith? To stay on the front lines, to continue to advocate, but even though we know that there's a system that exists that's in a way oppressing.
I'll just continue from what Sister Blair was saying. You know, if you believe in a sovereign God like that, your thoughts should flow from there. Like that should be your filter, right? It's either we were created in his image or we were not. There's no support for some of us were and some of us weren't, right? And I would say for myself, my faith carries me. I will say that whatever it was that I, growing up in the US, even have learned, you literally have to travel sometimes to see some faith in action, right? So it's a difference about praying, but having access as opposed to laying your hands on your child and believing God for healing, because there is no hospital. That's a whole different, frame of mind. And I'll also say that as far as those who would want to support and come alongside, it is really getting educated. The dismantling of the narrative is so important. I will tell you that I went through 12 years of school. It wasn't until I got to Howard University, and thank goodness for my father, who taught me my history. So it's important to understand that there is nothing that Mr. Ben or Sister Blair or Johnny is saying that none of us are going, huh, I've never heard of that before. We all get it. It's just the same spirit, different locations. So for us, the advocacy, the dismantling of these policies that did not benefit us at all. And then sometimes it's also educating even the farmers here in the US who may have been told that, hey, you're helping these poor people. But as Mr. Ben said for himself, and knowing that you have to evolve in your learning and your understanding, that it sounds good that you're donating 3 tons of peanut butter or 3 tons of rice. But if you expand your understanding, knowing that, well, wait, what will happen to all the peanut farmers? What's going to happen to all the rice farmers who are in market selling these items if our government gives it for free? It's going to destroy it, which is exactly what happened. So as I see people becoming more educated about this and having an understanding, it has led to different actions. For example, folks are supporting smaller organizations that are on the ground and that have boots on the ground. Folks are supporting more so investing into the farmers or small businesses, as opposed to the charity, as I said before. And I think Ms. Blair said something also about stewardship. I know it was Johnny, stewardship and ownership. And she mentioned dominion, right? To have dominion is a vocation, a going to engage. How it has been implemented is domination. And those are two totally different things. And as the old saying goes, a person forced against their will is of the same opinion still. So that you've taken the land does not mean I still don't want it. I still don't know how to till it, right? So being good stewards and knowing it's almost like that you don't own anything. The gift that you're getting is to being on the land. So you should feel responsible, not only for tilling it while you're there, but then how do you pass it on? And my faith tells me that I have the victory. So I have to constantly look at that when those times come where I may have doubt. And also being part of circles like this, where I know that there are other folks that are boots on the ground as well. That encourages me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that great answer and response to getting people to really understand the power is already within us and we should have dominion over what God has called us to. I'm going to go to Mr. Burkett because I see he's back here with us. I just want, you talked about doing the work for over 50 something years. Thank you for that. I'm sure you have a legacy of great young folks that are coming behind you, but we wanted to know what has it been like to even partner with an organization like Bread and some of the other work that you're doing, so that if there are farmers, if they want to get connected, how do they connect with you and other farmers who are, or people who are interested? But what is it like working with Bread for the world and organizations? And what would you say to the UN and to those who are working on ag policy?
Yes, ma'am. That's the only way as people without much financial resources can really effectively change the system, by numbers, by working together, by nonprofit organizations, profit organizations, how they come together. That's the only way you can effectively bring about change when you don't have the financial resources. So by working with all the organizations that's concerned about food issues, black and white, Native American, Hispanic, African American, the Vietnamese now in this area, the Hmong people, and we all could come together. Then we can really bring about a change in policy. And to effectively change the United States government agricultural policy, which is totally entrenched in big agriculture. But one
It seems we have a little bit of a technical difficulty and a delay. Let's give it a second. Mr.
Tonya, may I
Burkett?
suggest if he turns off his
Un-
video, it might be that that's what's pulling all of the energy and he can
Right.
speak without video. Just as
Absolutely. There you go. Mr. Burkett? If not, I mean, we got the gist of what he was saying, which is we need to work together. And numbers matter. Numbers mean a lot to attack agriculture policy.
and that the COVID virus 19 system. It showed that the virus is the vulnerable of the system.
Yes.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Mr. Burkett. I know we're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we appreciate you staying on the line and answering those questions for us. We're certainly going to share with our participants your contact information and how they can get involved and engage. But I want to go back to Reverend Blair. In one of our conversations when our awesome and fearless convener, Reverend Angelique, we were talking about this. There was one thing that she really wanted to pretty much drive home, because we do some work at Bread for the World around racial equity. And so the one question we have here is, what are the ways that our food systems domestically and globally, especially as it relates to places like Africa and throughout the African diaspora, need to change to become more racially equitable?
Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you for that question. I think when we talk about food systems, we really mean every aspect of workers from the land, from the farm to the table in this $2 trillion industry domestically. And so the way that we begin to change our food systems and everything from production, processing, and distribution and retail across the African diaspora, so that our food systems become more racially equitable and so that we can thrive, is that we first must acknowledge, admit, and identify the inequities that are there. As I said earlier, it's hard to dismantle what people are not willing to name. And so we know that there is a legacy of disenfranchisement against Black and African people. Second, there has to be a commitment to racial justice. Poetically speaking, Gwendolyn Brooks said it best when she said, "We are each other's harvest." She said, "We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond." And so for me, a racially just and equitable food system requires that our sisters and brothers throughout the diaspora have capital resources, power, access to the resources, funding. We've got to have access to livable wages that are commensurate with the output and the outcome of the work that they are doing, because far too often the income is disenfranchising at best, and in many instances, it is right at or below the poverty line. We are producers of more than just work. We are producers of knowledge and ability, yet in many instances, the working conditions are often substandard, they're oppressive, and they are marginalizing. I think also we've got to look at the whole system of what is happening. We have to look at the impact that it has on health. There are interlocking systems of racism and health disparities that lead to chronic illnesses, and we don't talk enough about that. We also have to look at the privileges and the amenities that are automatically afforded to white farmers. I'm talking about access, I'm talking about benefits, I'm talking about prospering and higher compensation that needs to be evenly distributed to Black farmers. And ensuring land justice is important too. There are many cases of land being taken from Black farmers, either through illegal activities like seizures and outright stealing the land, or it is through other forms of displacement and eviction through things like eminent domain and other economic stipulations that further disadvantage them. Agriculture is a way of life. It is a form of resistance to the systems that have tried to erase us, that have tried to displace us. And when we are displaced and disconnected from the land, it's got cultural implications because of our spiritual connection, our African cosmology of connecting to the ancestors and caring for the land in a way that is sacred and ethical. And then finally, I'll just say that we've got to start really looking more at these policies that are in place that are prioritizing one group and disadvantaging the other group, because if our needs are not being centered in this, if our livelihood is not being taken into consideration, then we will continue to see the disproportionate impact that it has in our funding, in our legislation, and in the uneven distribution of resources that are distributed. And so we've got to start looking at, you know, faith-based policies. And that's why I'm so appreciative of the work that Bread for the World is doing, because it's through a faith lens and looking at how do we make impacts in our policies in a way that is equitable and that is just.
Thank you so much for that. That was definitely good. You talked about a lot, the cultural implications, and whether or not we get our fair share, a piece of the pie. I hope folks are listening in and tuning in. And so I'm hoping that they will take this part of this conversation. And now when I do panelists, I always say, just get a nugget. If you just get one nugget, and we've had so many nuggets shared here today, to use a food analogy, but we've had so many golden nuggets shared today that I'm just in awe of each of you just taking the time to share. But I do want to see, I see Mr. Ben Burkett is back. I saw the hand go up, so I don't want to move on unless that was by accident. But if you wanted to say something, I would give you an opportunity. If not, I want to go over to Ms. Toms. Did you have another question, or did you want to follow up with something, Mr. Burkett?
No, I was putting a hand because of what he was saying.
Oh, okay, yeah, Rachel. I got you. Right. That's what we do. Like, amen. Keep going. That's right. So thank you so much for that, Reverend Blair. I will say that you're always such a wealth of information, and I'm happy to have some new friends here between Ms. Toms, they're gonna get me right, Mr. Burkett and Chef Rhodes. I got new friends in this space, and so I'm super excited. But I wanted to go to Ms. Toms, and if you could, and I know you did such a great job in the top of the hour, and for some of those who have probably just come back onto the call, I want you to just talk a little bit about, you know, you wrapped it up very well, nice bow and everything, but give us a little bit more of your perspective, because you've been doing this work. You're in the trenches, you see it, you're helping get people out there to advocate for it. Give us a little bit more about your perspective and, you know, what someone can do. As I train people to, you know, jump into this work, whether it be around food or housing or to end poverty, I'm like, just give me 5 minutes. You go and advocate for this. Just take 5 minutes, write a letter. Come on. What can you do for me in 5 minutes? So for the people who are listening, can you give them something that they can take with them to get them to understand that, you know, we got to not grow weary in our well-doing as it relates to ensuring that we don't get left behind as it relates to having adequate resources, and particularly food, good food.
I'll say this. There's a story of a person walking down a beach, and it's him and his son. And as he's walking, there's 1,000 starfish that are just strewn all over the place. And as he's walking, he keeps throwing them back into the water. And the son says, well, why are you doing that? And he said, you know, there's thousands of them here. Is that going to make a difference? And his response was, it will make a difference to this one. This one. So there are 13 million people in my country, right? If I think about it in that capacity, I don't think I would have woke up this morning. But what I do believe is I believe in replication, and I believe in the pebble that goes in the pond and just reverberates. I believe that what community to community is doing in my father's hometown can reverberate across the country. Anywhere you go in Haiti, it's the same. It's the farming, it's infrastructure, it's water, it's education, it's economic development. So I know that what we're doing is going to impact all of that. I also, when I engage with people, I don't want to overwhelm anyone, right? I always tell folks to get educated because that's very important, right? Whatever you join, you don't want to burden. You don't want them bringing you along. You want to come to add to it. And at the very least, you want to get educated. And then there are multiple ways that you can help so that you get to choose. It could be via advocacy. It could be helping us with researching policy. It could be helping with economic development and helping our farmers and small business get back on their feet. A little actually does a lot. If you think of yourself as a pebble in a pond, then you know you may do one thing that actually ends up reverberating. So what I say to people as it relates to engaging with us is I invite you to be a part of something greater than yourself. So join us. Join us. You will find exactly where you fit in, and you will see that what you contribute will reverberate.
That was certainly a word. Listen, be a pebble. You know, be a pebble, be a pebble, be a pebble. That's a word for today. Let's see. Let me go back to we're going to be wrapping up shortly, but I want to know, see whether or not our panelists, is Chef Rose still here? I know that sometimes when we hit certain buttons, we go off screen.
I am still here.
You are. Thank you, brother. Come back on. And if you would give us a little bit more about the work that you're doing, and if there was some that you wanted to leave our audience with as it relates to doing the work that you're doing. You've been in this fight as well. Are you training another generation of advocates to come alongside you to go to policymakers, whether it be in City Hall in Houston or go to Austin? Well, I want to know what you're doing in a policy framework. I know you guys doing the work on the ground and practitioners, but what are you doing in a policy world?
As far as the policy world, I'm going to be as frank and honest with you as I
Right
can.
ahead.
I have not been well versed or involved in the policy realm. I think that everybody has their place,
Yes.
and I truly do believe that policy is important as far as the long game goes. But for me, I think I haven't quite made it to that playing field just yet.
Okay.
There's so many different playing fields here that I want to have a full spectrum, right? I think that wisdom without knowledge of action isn't really wisdom. I want to know how things operate. It's hard to advocate for something that I don't completely comprehend. And I want to comprehend it from every small minuscule. I want to understand what it's like and not just speak on how it feels or what I think how somebody else feels, but I want to actually know their anguish. I want to actually know what it feels like to have my hands hurt, to have my back hurt, to be tired, right? Because when you speak for people and not allow them to speak for themselves, it's no longer genuine. Yeah. And I want to keep a genuine spirit in this fight, because I think that being genuine, being honest, and being transparent is what makes people want to join, versus feeling like opinions on how they feel versus what is actually going on outweighs that. And living in an age of social media, I think that happens a lot these days. And I want to partake in everything that is actual and factual. So once I make it to that level of policy, I want to be well versed in my knowledge and in my capabilities of understanding and empathy from every corner.
Absolutely. I get that point. And so guess what? I already dropped in the chat my contact information, because you're just telling your story is part of that process. We collect stories all the time, and we have different practitioners go before Congress and just share your story, share your everyday and how you're making it through the process, and you're able to build upon that. So thank you for being very frank and honest and with us. And that's a good thing, because that's what we like. Let me see. I think Did I get another question? Hold on, let me see if that was a question in the chat. It seems that we got a comment in the chat that I'm just going to read. So this is my first time seeing this. It says agriculture being a focus in Haiti with the proper equitable investments can change sustainable trajectory within 3 years. The U.S. World Bank. Okay, is this a statement or a question? Let me see. Thank you, Karine. Okay, on point. So we're going to agree with that because I was about to read.
No, you can. And this is a great place you were saying about sharing what other things that you do. Tonya Johnson is the founder for the Haitian Women's Collective, of which I'm a member. So this point is specific, and I agree with you of reading it. What she's saying is that agriculture being a focus in Haiti with the proper equitable investments can change the sustainable trajectory within 3 years. The US, World Bank, others can commit to supporting Haiti with funds to ensure that 90% production of our own food and support exporting means bringing in business and reducing poverty. 100% correct.
Absolutely. So Queen Jocelyn, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Is there anything else you want to add to that? Are there any incubators? Are there any systems or projects or people or nonprofits folks can go to get connected if they're thinking about doing work like that with Haiti?
Certainly, they can go to community.info, which I can drop in the chat as well. The Haitian Women's Collective, the International Black Women's Public Policy Institute. There are multiple, and we are so now working with each other that we will have a list on each other's websites of the other organizations that are on the ground. So it could be that you particularly want to help with the community you're from, for example, in Haiti. You can do that. It can be that you're particularly focused on women or men or farmers or water or agriculture. You can do that as well. So like I said, I invite folks, if you I'm sure my email was in the information that was sent out to everyone, but I'm happy to post it here in the chat and to keep this conversation going. Thank you for offering to let me do that. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yes, drop it in the chat. Stephanie will make sure the attendees get that, and then it's made available through our other platforms. I wanted to go back to one of the things, I know Chef Rhodes is still with us, so while we got him here, because some people think you get from 0 to 100 just by getting there. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the lessons? Maybe one of those most important lessons you learned on your journey of doing the work that you're doing in that space. And we know people don't just get 0 to 100, but I want to know if you could share one of those lessons with us.
I would say that as difficult as it is obtaining land, it's even harder maintaining it. So whatever it is, whatever energy that you think you're getting it, be prepared to spend that tenfold in maintenance. I would say that farming is 90% physical and 10%. I mean, 90% mental and 10% physical. And that isn't just farming it for food production, but just maintaining land. And not having that experience in that, and not having a family experience in that, is something that I went into under processing, underestimated it. And I think that it takes time for you to really kind of go into it with a game plan, right? All of it doesn't have to be done at one time. Everybody isn't Barry Bonds. Everybody doesn't have to knock it out of the park right away. There's nothing wrong with chipping away at it. And I think that when we see some of these things, we think about, how can I get it done, a finished product, money. But I would say chipping away at it and being diligent and being disciplined is, I would say that's the key to land ownership.
Yes, well, thank you so much for that. I'm gonna ask you one more question, and then we're gonna begin our wrap-up session. What got you started in this? Did you share why you got started? And that's a question for each one of our panelists. How you got started in this? I know for Reverend Blair, you in ministry, maybe you could tell us about your calling. I don't know, but I'm just curious. I'm being nosy right now. Go ahead, Chef Rhodes.
I got started because I found myself in a space to where my restaurant was $225 per person to eat. I was talking about food history, and I was, performing our food in a very articulate manner. But the people in my community were unable to attend, even though the stories and the food were about them. So I basically took everything that I had at that junction and moved forward with farming and owning the property, so that way I can actually make a difference and not just hold conversations about the difference that needs to be made. And after meeting farmer Mr. Ben Burkett, it just really kind of came full circle for me. And in May 2020, I purchased my property.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And that was probably during a pandemic, right?
Yeah, it was 2 months after the pandemic.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very good. Very good. Well, we certainly wish you well with that. Reverend Blair, can you tell us how you got started in the space, whether it be advocacy and or ministry?
Yes, so about 10 years ago, when I was on the campus of Perkins School of Theology at Southern Methodist University doing my master's level work, we did a program called Harvest for the World and really started looking at what are some of the disparities that are happening. Out of that, I discovered that Dallas really is the tale of two cities. At one time, it's the richest city. It also has one of the highest poverty rates. And I then learned that about 90% of our students in the independent school district were on the free or reduced lunch program. That got me to asking questions. And so from that question of finding out that information, it then led me to start really delving into why is there food insecurity in a city as large as Dallas, and what are the systems that are in place that are causing that. And finally, I'll say in 2019, the area where I live and pastor in was declared a food desert when the last big box retailer left, and there has not been a replacement in those 2 years. So that leaves an area disadvantaged. And so that's what really fuels my work, and that's what really got me into this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Mr. Burkett, we're going to go to Mr. Burkett. How you got started? Yes.
Okay. I got started in the farming operation. I took over from my father in 1973. And I took over a farming operation. It was about 100 acres, cotton, vegetable. Back then we had contract vegetable. I grew it to 700 acres or more. Now I'm to 320 acres again. So I was kind of in here. I'm the fourth generation farming land, and we acquired land in 1889. I got involved in the advocacy side of work, the Federation, and the farm crisis, credit crunch in late 80s and early. So that's how I got involved in the advocacy work, testifying before Congress, and becoming a member of the National Family Farm Coalition, where I was president for 11 years. Member of La Viva Campesino, the worldwide movement of small farmers, and I've been organizing the World Farmers Market Coalition with the UN and the Italian farmers in Italy. So I actually got in my community. I did my paperwork to reorganize my FSA, and I started helping other farmers with their paperwork. And then just been it. But my basis of my income have always been in production agriculture.
Awesome. And if you could, Mr. Burkett, tell us, I wanted to know how many in your consortium or a collective of farmers, how many Black farmers are there?
My cooperative, Indian Spring Farm Association, we had with the highest we ever had 56 members. Now we got 34 members.
Okay. And they're all across the U.S.
Came through a lot of updates. No, that's the local cooperative community. Now in the Federation of Southern Cooperative, it's 15,000 members. Oh, not all farmers. That's credit unions, housing co-ops, consumer co-ops, co-op stores within the Federation of Southern Cooperative. that's only in the southern states,
Ah,
from Texas to South Carolina. We are up in cooperative. So here in the state of Mississippi, we got 18 cooperative and 2 credit unions. When we started the cooperative, we couldn't borrow money. So we decided we would start credit unions. But now since the credit crunches and everything, we have all our cooperative either have went out of credit union and we done run out of business. I've been absorbed by the big co-op credit union. So again, we're looking at going back, trying to reestablish community-based credit unions.
absolutely. Well, I'm going to make sure, because at Bread, we want to be a resource to our partners and allies and constituencies. So I want to certainly figure out how it is I can certainly help link you up with members of Congress who could assist with that financial services. I formerly worked for Congresswoman Joyce Beatty on financial services. And so maybe there may be some linkage and connections that I can make to ensure that you all are able to restart getting a credit union started. So I'll look into that and hopefully be able to share some resources with you offline to better assist you. I want to go over to Ms. Toms because we're wrapping up. And so, Ms. Thomas, if you would tell us how you got involved, and you can add to that your closing remarks, because then I'll go to each person following. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Basically, I was working at American Express, and in 2010, the earthquake, the first one, hit, and my father is the one that really gave me my faith and my passion for my country, and he lived it out where I could see it, and I believe that's what he handed down to me. So in May of that year, I submitted my resignation and started community to community and went home for the first time in 16 years. And everything was, I would say, really orchestrated. The folks we met, how we engaged with the 2 partner communities that we work with, I honestly think that my steps were ordered, because in truth, I fully did not know what I was going to do. I just wanted to help, right?
Yes.
But I will tell you, even from, what is it? If you take care of God's business, He's gonna take care of your business.
Hello. Yes.
Right? So,
Yes.
and He's also very smart. He doesn't tell you all the stuff because He knows if He did, you wouldn't go. But
Yeah.
right? Okay. So it was the love for my country. And I knew that in my father's honor, I had to do something. I couldn't be a spectator. I needed to be a participant. And, 11 years later, the communities that we work with, we're families now. Like, we've been together. We've argued together, laughed together, cried together, right? To get to where we are. And I feel that they have taught me and the team as much as we've taught them. So for me, this is the body of my work. This is me until Jesus cracks the sky. Like, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I know what my vocation is. And I think, like I said, when you continue walking, opportunities like being here with Brett, meeting Angelique, hearing from Mr. Burkett, hearing from Johnny and Reverend Blair, I would not have known to come to this group, right? So it is, once you get on that track, the doors open and you meet the correct people to advance your calling forward, because that's not something you can do yourself, in my opinion. So I'm grateful for you, for Stephanie handling the tech, and Angelique inviting me, and Sasheda, if she's listening, thank you for this opportunity to be here. I appreciate that I'm leaving here with more than I came with, in knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. You sort of wrapped it up for me, because I too am super excited that I am certainly leaving with more than I came to the table with, but that's how God works. And being that this is obviously Food Day, where we go and we eat, we get full. And today we're actually full. We're full with information. We're full with new resources that we can tap into relationships. And so I'm super excited to have been able to be here, but I want to see if Reverend Blair had some closing remarks. You have about 1 minute because our good convener, Reverend Dr. Angelique, will come and close us out and wrap this thing up. But I wanted to make sure I give each of our panelists an opportunity, 1 minute, to sort of wrap up. If there's any final words you want to leave with our listening or webinar audience or Zoom audience so that they can go and make new farms, make new farmers, do what they have to do so that our community will be better equipped. Being better equipped is really what it's about. So if you could share with us some closing remarks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to do so. I would say for anybody who is interested in getting involved and being a part of what's happening is to find out who are the people in their communities that are doing some things and ask questions. It's important for us to always to make sure that we're asking questions and to be curious about what's happening and to understand that your voice is powerful. You have the power to be an activist and to get involved in what's happening in your community. So don't miss the opportunity to be involved, to connect with some organizations and to find out what's happening and how you can help to implement change.
Oh, I was on mute. Thank you so much, Reverend Blair. I certainly appreciate this opportunity once again to be here with you. Mr. Burkett, it's seeming like maybe he's doing some transitioning. What about our good brother, Chef Johnny? Are you still here with us?
Indeed, I am.
Come on camera. And then we're gonna go back to Mr. Ben Burkett. Johnny, go right ahead.
I'm getting it adjusted. Yeah, I would say for anyone that's looking to get involved in any of these endeavors, I would say it's important to take a great internal look as to why. I don't think that farming or land ownership or getting involved with things of this magnitude are for glorious reasons other than the fact that it's the right thing to do. I think that once again, being genuine and being forward with yourself makes it a lot easier to be forward with everyone else. You may not even get to see the results or the fruits of your labor, but you got to have that faith of a mustard seed that is still going to grow. And I think that is extremely important, as you know, as it was spoken very illustriously earlier, that that we put in faith into things that we may not necessarily bear fruit from, but we're doing this for each other, not for ourselves. And it may take 25 years, it may take 25 months, it may take 100 years, but nonetheless, being a part of that process and laying down those seeds, it has to be done by somebody. So why not you? Let's just make sure we're doing it for the right reasons.
Absolutely. All righty. So I want to just say from my full heart, I don't know why people say from the bottom, but from my full heart, thank each of you so much for being here, for sharing your wealth of information with our BREAD listeners. This is likely going to obviously be shared throughout our network. And so we're super excited that you were able to come with a full wealth of information to just share freely. And that's sometimes I don't want to ever take that for granted. So I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And if BREAD can ever do something to support your organization and support what you're doing to make sure that people understand the importance of just even having this conversations around Haiti Black farmers on World Food Day, we just appreciate it. I want to see if our amazing convener is able to come back, and there she is. So again, thank you so much. And Angelique, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you for allowing me to moderate this wonderful conversation and get a wealth of information. Thank you.
Thank you, Tonya. Thank you so much for your careful moderation, making sure all the voices were heard and the points previously discussed were actually posed and actually responded to. All of the panelists, hopefully you know by now how much I appreciate on behalf of BREAD, your gifts and your expertise. And just to say on behalf of BREAD for the World, that appreciation runs deep. We are looking forward to how we build out our Black farmers' work. Heretofore, we have been doing so. This is how a couple of you were identified. A couple of you were identified through our Pan-African work, generally speaking, and with our Pan-African women's work. So we see some wonderful complementarity in our work at Bread for the World. So we are really looking forward to the next steps of what this all means. We are in the process of envisioning what a Black Farmers Roundtable may look like. So you'll be hearing more, but this comes out of the work we've already done. And Ben Burkett was a part of this around the work that we did with independent consultation for the, oh, and Reverend Blair was there as well, for the independent consultation we had with the UN that led to the Food System Summit. We were glad to be a part of that conversation. In the chat, I've identified the links related to the work, the research, the writings, the reflections, and yes, the link to the UN summit that was independent dialogue that was done in preparations for the summit. That summit has now occurred, and there are learnings there. There are both celebrations and critique at the same time relative to the summit. These things will be further explored even as we put together our Black Farmers Roundtable. So we look forward to you possibly being a part of that. We also want to say that Bread for the World is in the process of identifying its values going forward. And I want to say that your conversations today around values and how values are lived out, not just constructed, but lived out. Certainly equity is one of those values that has come to the forefront in this space, but there are others that have come to the forefront as well. Just know that these perspectives will be taken seriously as we identify our top values as Bread for the World going forward. Tonya knows that Bread is in the process of recalibrating its impact, its future. We have a new president. We have a way forward that will be more on the ground focused as well as on the Hill and in global regard. So we thank God for you, look forward to the ways in which the future may yet unfold, the ways in which togetherness, as I heard, I think Mr. Burkett say, building those coalitions to ensure that the authenticity of voices, not just voice, but voices come together to give direction around how our world could be more of the kingdom to which God has called us for in these days and times. So we say thank you again, God bless you, and we look forward to the days ahead. This is a recalibrated kind of beginning, so we look forward to the ways in which you might aid us in the future. And as Tonya has said, both she and I are an email away. For better or worse, you already have my email. You are invited to use it as we go forward. Now you have Tonya's, bless your heart, Tonya. So let us be in community. Let us be prayerful. Let us be contemplative as we engage thought leadership for these days and times. Again, thanks to all. Thanks to Bread for the World, the Congressional Black Caucus, and all who have made this time possible. We thank you and say farewell.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you and all the best. Thank you, Stephanie, for allowing your gifts to make this possible.
Absolutely. Let's see, because they're still recording. Let me start recording. Nope.
Stephanie will be the one